In today's video, I'm going to be sharing how I made this collar pattern. If you want to learn how to make a collar pattern for a shirt, then this is the right video for you. To start the pattern, the first thing we are going to do is to rule a margin line at the edge of the paper. The purpose of the margin line is for us to not start our pattern at the edge of the paper. So we are going to rule 1 cm to 2 cm. You can also use 1 inch. The main thing is that we don't want to use the edge of our paper to start. So after ruling the margin line, the first point, we are going to be labeling that as A. The next thing to do is to get our point B, which is our total neck width, which is our back and front neck width. So we are going to measure it from point A inward, whatever our neckline measurement is. For this pattern, I'm using 8 inches. And that's going to be our point B. So we are going to label that part as B. The next thing to do is to get our point C. We are going to be measuring point C upward point B with 4.5 inches. So we are going to roll our 4.5 inches. That is going to be our point C. Then after getting our point C, we are going to look for point D, which is just upward A. We are going to measure the same thing we measured B to C. That will be our D line. And now, before we continue, we need to rule a straight line, which is going to be the same thing we ruled A to B. We are going to be ruling it from D to C, which is the same 8 inches. After getting our line, we are going to be joining B to C. And we are also going to be joining C to D. I forgot to label it, but I'm going to label it before we continue. D. So we're going to be connecting C to D. Now we have our A, B, C, D. The next thing we need to get is our point E. Our point E is our back neck measurement. So from point A, we are going to measure inward our back measurement. Let's not forget that this pattern is on fold. So if you are measuring 6, it's going to be 3. So it has to be divided by 2. For this pattern, I'm using 3.5 and I'm going to be labeling it as E. To get my point F, I'm going to go upward B by 1 inch. That is going to be my F line. So I'm going to be labeling that side as letter F. Now I'm going to connect F to E using the curved part of my ruler. I'm not using the straight part, I'm using the curvy part of my ruler. So I'm going to be connecting my F to my E. Or should I say I'm connecting my E to my F. After connecting E to F, I'm going to get my point G, which is upward point A by 1.25 centimeter, which is also known as 1/4. That's going to be my letter G. On line E, I'm going to be measuring 1.25 as well, or 1/4 on my point E, and I'm going to be connecting it to F, to G rather. While ruling this line, I realized that it wasn't straight, which means something is wrong. So I had to cross check, and I realized that on my point A to G, I mistakenly measured 1.5 instead of 1.25. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it off. Now that I have my correct point G, I'm going to be connecting it to the line I measured upward point E as well. So from line F, I'm going to go ahead and measure 1 inch upward and connect it to the G line. So I'm going to go on line F, measure 1 inch and connect it to the G line using the same curve that I used to curve from E to F. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to be labeling the point H, and I'm going to curve from F to H. That is for my button stand. So I'm just going to create a slight curve with my pencil. For me to get my point I, I'm going to be measuring 1 inch upward G line. So I'm going to take my measurements and measure 1 inch upward G line. So that is going to be my letter I. After getting my letter I, the next thing I'm going to do is to get letter J, or should I say point J. And point J is 1 inch inward from point H. So I'm going to measure 1 inch inward, and I'm also going to label it as J. Now I'm going to connect from J to I with my curve. So I'm using the part of the curve that is a bit curvy, not the straight part. So I'm going to measure to rule a line joining point I to point J. After I've joined point J to point I, the next thing I'm going to do is to get the tip of my collar. So from point C, I'm going to go upward with 1 cm, 1.5 cm, because I want my collar to be pointy. So I'm going to go upward with 1 centimeter, and I'm going to be connecting from point J to the new point C, or to the 1 centimeter that we now extended on point C. After connecting it, we are going to find our point K, and point K is 1.75 centimeter from point I. So I'm going to go upward with 1.75 centimeter, or should I say 1/3 of an inch. And sometimes I do 2 inches, but for this pattern I'm going to be doing 1.75, and I'm going to be labeling that as point K. To get my point L, I'm going to measure 3 inches inward point K, and I'm going to be labeling it as point L. The line is straight, it is not curvy. So I'm going to rule a line from K to the 3 inches, and the 3 inches is going to be labeled as point L. Now I'm going to connect L to C, and I'm going to be using the less curvy part of my French curve to connect from L to C. And that is our collar pattern. So I'm going to be labeling my center back, and I'm also going to be labeling my center front. And I'm also going to label it on the collar row, which is CB, and I'm also going to be labeling CF. I'm also going to label the tip of my collar so that we can be familiar with where the tip is, because sometimes they look alike. So that is the end of my collar. So I'm going to be labeling the stand collar. So that's the one that is going to be standing while the other one is going to be rolling. I'm going to go ahead and shade the part of the collar that I am not using. So I'm going to shade that off so that when we want to cut it, it is not going to be confusing for us to cut. So this is what the collar looks like after drafting the parts, or after shading the parts that we are not going to be using. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the pattern so that we can know where to cut. We don't go and cut where we don't need to cut.